Hi there, I'm Deb Crow, and I want to welcome you to Season 4 of Imperfect, the Heart-Centered Leadership Podcast. This is a podcast where we connect, learn, and laugh together with authentic and courageous leaders from all over the globe. You will learn from leaders you haven't even met yet. You will gain new tools to add to your leadership toolkit, because leadership belongs to all of us. It is not measured by stature or title. So please pull up a chair and listen in. This is the Imperfect, Heart-Centered Leadership Podcast. Welcome back to Imperfect, the Heart-Centered Leadership Podcast. And I'm excited to have Keith Goode on the show today. So Keith, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
I've talked so much today, I've got a frog in my throat, so we'll get through this interview. But Keith, you have such an interesting background, and I know the work that you're doing today is going to be of interest to our listeners. So share a little bit about you and the work that you're doing today.
Great. I'd love to. So again, my name is Keith Goode. I'm the Vice President of Services at ZeroedIn. I've had the privilege of working with analytics and reporting for over 20 years, specializing in the HR space. I've worked with a variety of both public and private organizations across industries such as retail, manufacturing, banking. I have to admit the issues are similar, but the solutions must fit within each of these types of organizations. Many times this requires expertise, tools for data cleaning, for aggregation, for model generation, all of which the geek in me really enjoys. However, the secret is being able to say yes to the unique requirements for a client. I deliver all kinds of different solutions, and I look forward to getting into more of the details with you.
Well, it's such an interesting perspective when we start talking about intrinsic names. And I know HR, human resources, I now hear it referred to as talent management, but at the end of the day, there's people behind the analytics, and I know people find this exciting. So my first leadership question is, I want to talk about the application of predictive models, specifically within HR analytics and the future of work, because I think a lot of people are thinking about the future, and I'm going to just add a little bit to this, Keith. When I think about the new phrased term, modern elder, that Chip Conley has phrased, it's age 45 and older. And we now have that as the biggest demographic ever globally, as the biggest population. We kind of went from the baby boomers to now the modern elders. The funnel has switched directions, and we have an ageism problem. So talk to us in the context of this analytics and the future of work and what you're seeing. And I'd love your own opinion outside of kind of what you're doing professionally.
Sure. So when we talk about predictive and predictive modeling, there's been a lot of advancements in the modeling generation perspective in using tools such as R and Python for introducing machine learning algorithms, and they're fantastic to work with. I've worked with several. One of my favorite is an algorithm called XGBoost. It stands for Extreme Gradient Boosting. And really what it allows us to do is take a data set of features. Features are individual elements that we think can impact a prediction. And in the past, we used to use just regression analysis, which would do that. But with machine learning, what these models can do is they look at each of the different instances, and it's able to determine which ones of these features are more important for coming up with a much better prediction. And that's very exciting. So in other words, it's learning from itself to make better predictions. Mm. We use it often for everything from flight risk to identifying with our clients who might be a good hiring candidate, promotion candidate, those types of areas we use machine learning and predictions for. There's a couple things that I think that take it into the current realm and beyond. First of all, when we start introducing machine learning and these predictive models, a lot of competitors and a lot of systems out there, they all say, yes, we do machine learning, we do AI and so forth, and they do. But where I think it's different for a client, and it gets back to being able to say yes. So can you take, every organization is different. When it comes to their people, they feel very, very much so that their people have different criteria. And when they generate models and they want to predict it, the first thing they're going to say is, well, is this based off my data? Is there other data mixed into this? How much impact do they have to control the algorithm, control what elements go into it? And that's how we're different. So we can work with our clients to identify those and answer those questions and build a model that's more configurable to their likings. And makes for a much more accurate prediction. And what we found is once we've been able to work with these predictions, a lot of times the question is, wow, that's really interesting, but why was this person predicted at a different level than this person? And a lot of their feature sets are the same. And that gets back to machine learning, because machine learning looks at those different features and weighs those differently when it comes up with a prediction. So we've generated what we call explainable AI. So after the prediction is made, we can then take that prediction and all the features about that one prediction, feed it back through the model, and answer questions like, oh, well, number of promotions seem to outweigh and weighted a lot for coming up with this prediction versus pay increases or tenure, whatever it might be. We can then go take an instance, revert it back through the model and identify what were those important features to come up with that prediction. In fact, you can then take that a step further, and we do a lot of what's called what-if analysis. So then you could change, well, what if I increased this person's pay? What if I promoted them to the next level? What if I changed their job role? How does that impact that prediction? So we can do all of that after we generate a model. We just don't end at the prediction. It's taking it that next step so that managers, people that are engaged and value that information can take that a step further and answer more questions.
And how do you think it's going to affect this aging population that I alluded to? Because I'll tell you why I asked. I spoke with a talent manager on the show, and I'm the Gen Xer. I'm the first year of Gen X. And she said to me, I'll give you a simplistic example. When we were learning to type, pre-computers, Keith, on typewriters, we were taught at the end of a sentence to do a period and then two spaces.
Yes.
And now with AI on, when you're online submitting a resume or CV, depending on who you are and what you're applying for, AI will pick up those two spaces, and it knows that person is a baseline age of this and older, and they're getting siloed, and it's adding to our ageism problem globally. So what do you think about that? I mean, I'm slowly looking at all of the tools, and it's always correcting me to have one space, but that has a big impact on the largest population globally, especially within talent management. What do you think and feel about that?
Well, two things. First, I would say getting back to just pure AI and coming up with those models and working with that. I think there's two aspects when you're looking at that age of population. And one thing that we found is that those AI is not replacing those. And if anything, AI can become much more effective when we tap into the people that have that experience that can, we can take data and throw it at a model and read what it says. Mm-hmm. But having someone with experience to say, yes, I understand why the model did that way, because, for the last 30 years, I know it doesn't make sense, but in this organization, we've done X, Y, Z. So having that institutional knowledge can tremendously enhance how AI works. So that's one aspect of your question. The other aspect, I think you were targeting more of what we call LLM, large language models. And it's amazing. AI has been able to understand language. It doesn't work the way we thought it was going for many years, tried to make it work by understanding individual words and placements. The algorithm is quite different, and it's very creative in how it was generated, but it understands language, trained on huge corpus of different types of language. So yes, it can take into those nuances and relate accordingly. And I think that's fantastic. The large language models are really great for understanding language. I think where things are going with that is, okay, well, how can I then take that thing that understands language and apply it to my workforce data or to my productivity information or to my hire information, candidate information? And that's, I think, where the challenge starts coming in is, and there's really some new great ways to do that, where you could take a LLM model that understands language and then train on top of it data that applies to your organization. And I think from an AI generative perspective, there's two areas that AI and generative AI can help out with. One is summary. Take, for example, you've got a dashboard page of all this information, and dashboard's where it's been, and that's been great. But some people still find it challenging to figure out what a dashboard means. If you're looking at 10 to 15 different graphs on it and some pivot data, what does this mean? So you could take that data and throw it to an AI LLM model, and it's going to summarize. It's going to be able to look at what might be interesting elements and summarize what that dashboard means. So if someone is not keen on looking at all the elements of a dashboard, they can then take that summary and really glean some just basic information. So one, summarization. Two is explanatory. So again, taking, say, that data set and then sending it to a large language model, it would then be able to help explain. You could then converse with that set of data and through that language model and say, well, what do you mean that this job is, lower in terms of X job? Or you can then have that conversation with that data and through a large language model to continue to make explanations with more fine set of that data. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And, this is one of these topics where, you can ask one question and then go down the rabbit hole, and it can just take us in so many different directions. So I kind of weaved in my second question. So my third question, which is normally my second question on the show, has permanent residency. What imperfections does Keith bring to his heart-centered leadership?
Oh, many. But whether it's an imperfection or not, I love this, and I could continue working. I sometimes find myself just deep into it and not willing to stop and get my head out and take a step back and say, okay, well, do we need to change our path? Do we need to do something different? I'll continue down a certain road and keep hammering at it. And sometimes it's better to take a step back and say, okay, well, maybe we need to go a different route. And with AI and predictive machine learning, often you have to take that step back. And so that's one area where I think I'm learning to adjust to.
Well, it's new and it's exciting, and I can sense your enjoyment and passion. And I think we can all say that about some element of what we like to learn and do within our work.
Right.
Okay, my last question around leadership is there such a thing as trustworthy data?
Trustworthy, yes, but it needs to be balanced with managerial insight. Trustworthy, absolutely, but a fact without taking it with other pieces of information and experience, I don't think we're there yet. You can trust the Tesla to maybe drive down the street, but would you trust it to take you across country? Again, I think we're getting, and that trust is getting stronger and stronger, but the Tesla still requires someone to be in the driver's seat. And I think it's the same way. I think we should look at it the same way. These are great tools and it can help us along the way, but we still need people in the driver's seat.
I grew up watching the Jetsons cartoon, and it's just so funny now from the 1970s to where we are today in 2024 to see all of the new tools and what's available. But AI is wonderful. It's growing exponentially. We're seeing it in all different sectors, but we're still always going to need that human element. And I'm happy you said that. I have a dear friend who's a radiologist, And I asked her just last week, how she's liking AI and what it does for her. And I was really shocked to hear her answer. And she said, I'll tell you why I love it the most, because in any given day, I might have to look at 275, 300 images, all from different departments in the hospital. And AI will do a pass at a specific time after each scan, and they get lined up for her to view and read, but more importantly, move along and delegate to another discipline of medicine, requisition a test. So it's really bringing all of the acute patients to the top of her list, as opposed to maybe not getting to them at the end of the day. So that efficacy and efficiency, especially in her world, she's loving it. As for ChatGPT and all the other things that we see on, social media, she doesn't have time for, but I can see how this is helping, especially in injury and illness and maybe slowing down the progression of disease. So that excites me just as a human, not even thinking about professionally what we do. And I'm going to segue now into my Fab Four. 4 fun questions, Keith. We just want to know what's sitting on the top of that brilliant mind. Name a word or phrase that shows up in Keith's daily leadership.
Accuracy. Accuracy is important. And that we always talk about accuracy with our clients, with our data. As you know, the amount of data is exponentially growing. And that's why we find such value in these data, these new machine learning algorithms. However, the accuracy of the historical data is sometimes a challenge. And we have to get in there and do a lot of cleaning, a lot of correlation, a lot of aggregation before it gets ready to be introduced into a model. So the accuracy on the back end impacts the accuracy on the front end.
Absolutely. Name a book that you've read at any time in your life. What was the name of the book and the author, and why was it impactful?
Well, lots of books, but I'll have to be honest, it would be the Bible. And I continually go back to it.
Well, that's been brought up lots of times on the show. You're not alone. Number 3, I'm granting you a wish. And let me give you some context. I'm giving you a wish to have dinner with a leader of your choice. Now, this leader could be living, Keith, or maybe they passed away. Who are you having dinner with, and what is the dinner conversation?
I think you mentioned earlier you were from Canada, and there's a Canadian that I find very interesting, and that would be Jordan Peterson.
Okay, the psychologist. Yes.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
He's a neat guy. I enjoy getting his weekly newsletter, and I think that would definitely be a fun dinner. He's come up on the show before, so nice to know that you're wanting to have dinner with a Canadian. I hope that happens.
Absolutely. I've had the pleasure of working with companies such as Scotiabank in Toronto and other Canadians, Bombardier, and any opportunity I get to go to Canada, Vancouver specifically. I love
It's beautiful, Western Canada.
Vancouver City, yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's always nice to hear on the show. Mm-hmm. Well, before I ask you my last question to have you finish out the show, I just want to say thanks for sharing and giving us a little glimpse into AI and the work that you're doing. And we so appreciate your time and expertise today.
It's my pleasure. And if anyone would love to carry on this conversation, as you can tell, I'm very passionate about it. You can find my contact information on LinkedIn at Keith A. Goode.
Perfect.
And our company is ZeroedIn.com. Again, we would love to carry on the conversation and dig deeper. If someone has questions on how to get started, or maybe they're stalled somewhere, there's probably some things that we can help them with.
Absolutely. And we'll put all your socials and contact info in the podcast episode description below so people can connect. So I'm going to have you finish this sentence to close out the show.
Okay.
Heart-centered leadership is?
It's focusing on the people, but using data and information to support decisions.
Thank Thanks so much for joining me today on Imperfect, the Heart-Centered Leadership Podcast. I hope you've enjoyed the show today and have learned some new tools for your leadership toolkit from our amazing heart-centered guest. If you like the show, feel free to give us a rating and a review, and we always welcome your feedback anytime. If you're ready to master the art of heart, my new book, The Heart-Centered Leadership Playbook, is now available on Amazon, or you can click the link below in our description.